Seeing the thresher sharks in Malapascua is genuinely one of the best underwater experiences I've ever had. We were somewhat unlucky. A typhoon passed by during our trip. We lost 2 full days of diving because of that. Visibility after the typhoon was bad. The wreck of the Mogami Maru was also an interesting dive, especially seeing the human remains and artifacts from when the ship was sunk in World War II. The magic of the thresher sharks was a combination of factors. Cleaning stations are always special. Pelagics linger instead of just passing by. A lot of dive shops use the term loosely, but there's just not that many places that actually have pelagic species reliably appear. Seeing the thresher sharks circling the pinnacle over and over is something special. The geography also made for a much more interesting dive profile. Kimud Shoal goes down hundreds of meters. We started the dive at 50 to 60 meters. Then we slowly followed the threshers up to 18 meters over 2 hours. It made for a particularly intimate encounter. The technical profile also meant that by the time we ascended to the top of the pinnacle, the recreational divers were gone. We had all the sharks to ourselves. It gave us the opportunity to see them in a slightly different environment. But mostly, it just gave us more time. Videography is difficult at Kimud because lights are banned. I don't think the quality of footage really matters that much to me. It's a hobby after all. I shoot what I enjoy seeing, and I think experiencing nature is more important than shooting it. But the extra time is valuable because it gives me the opportunity to observe more behaviors. Wildlife videography is unique in the sense that you don't get to direct your subject. The more time you spend with an animal, the higher the chance of seeing it do something interesting. Also, it's just fun to spend time in the water with sharks. On the Mogami Maru, I was surprised that human skulls don't really look as you'd expect from the movies. Or perhaps being underwater for 80 years makes a difference. They made the wreck a little more real. This wasn't the first real World War II wreck we'd seen. We had previously dived the USS Emmons in Okinawa. But the Mogami Maru was a much smaller ship. Most of the other wrecks we'd dived were intentionally sunk and felt a little more theme park in nature. Huge square holes cut throughout the deck and sides, usually sitting upright in shallow water. An artificial wreck feels more like an obstacle course for divers to penetrate. On a real wreck, you can actually see the damage. I think a big reason for the fascination of wrecks is the confluence of 2 things. Time has stopped for the ship. It's frozen underwater in the state it was in. And yet time continues around the ship as life grows on it. It transforms into something new. Certainly, once the wreck is completely degraded, we'd hardly be able to call it a wreck. But in the interim state, it becomes something more than just a ship. And then there was the typhoon. We were well within the outer ring of the typhoon as it passed by the island. I think we gained an appreciation of just how susceptible the Philippines is to natural disasters. Just a few weeks after we left, there was a major earthquake only 10 kilometers from the port. I'd say we got lucky with the typhoon. The island's residents and businesses handled the storm with familiar nonchalance, almost humorously so. All the boats were pulled out of the water and secured with ropes. Life just went on as usual. The restaurant continued to operate. The resort basically functioned as normal, except for the diving. The biggest impact was probably that the clouds blocked Starlink and the 4G networks. That wasn't very pleasant. We had literally nothing else to do. Malapascua and Cebu in general is incredibly undeveloped. Other than diving, I don't think there's anything to do on the island. Nothing really works together as a system. There's a large port that looks brand new, but the roads leading to it from the city turn a 30-minute drive into 4 hours. The airport is new and looks great, but once you're outside the terminal building, the rest of the infrastructure is breaking apart. Of all the places I've visited, Malapascua takes respect for the marine ecosystem the most seriously. Part of it is probably because the entire tourism industry relies on that single species at that single dive site. It wasn't just the no lights rule. There was a strong emphasis on buoyancy and situational awareness. You have resorts in the Maldives with no glove rules, but then they'll bring inexperienced divers into fragile coral gardens because they're paying $100 a dive. In my experience, many dive shops implement these rules as a form of theater, to present an image that customers can buy into. Malapascua, I think, actually believes in it. You could see it in simple things. Lifting fins. Making inexperienced divers shallow up. Unlike elsewhere, the guides here actually look out for these things. But Malapascua also tends to attract somewhat more experienced divers. It's not a popular holiday destination. That makes a big difference. It also helps that Kimud Shoal is almost entirely covered in hydroids. It's hard to ignore touching something that hurts like hell. Does Malapascua's success come from better ethics, or from attracting divers who need less policing? Honestly, I think more of the latter, though ultimately it's a combination of both. If Malapascua became a mainstream holiday destination, I doubt the conservation culture would survive. Kimud Shoal is only so large. There's just no way to sustain 100 divers on the site and not chase the thresher sharks away. The conservation culture doesn't matter if a place simply cannot physically accommodate the volume of divers. I suppose the infrastructure inadvertently protects the encounter, but only partially. Komodo is a huge headache to get to, but it still faces over-tourism. If Malapascua becomes extremely well-known outside diving circles, I don't imagine the inconvenience of the roads will be a sufficient deterrence. Perhaps sometimes a place going mainstream destroys the very value proposition that made it popular to begin with.